And welcome to Crunch Math. Today we're going to be going over the algebra portion of the SAT, which covers 5 topics. We have linear equations in one variable, linear functions, linear equations in 2 variables, systems of 2 linear equations in 2 variables, and linear equalities in 1 or 2 variables. But I'm going to keep this simple with y'all. A lot of these things are the same thing. For example, these first 2 things, linear functions and linear equations in one variable, those are the same thing. Same with linear equations, 2 variables, and the systems of 2 linear equations. They're all the same thing. And I'm going to add to that level of them all being similar because you're going to use the same equation of y equals mx plus b. Then you have this oddball, which is the inequalities. This is the one that's different from the rest, but it's still going to be very simple, still involving things like slope, nothing quadratic, nothing like that. And it's still going to be simple, but it's going to involve more word problems. How we're going to go over these topics is we're going to be going over some of the harder problems in each of these sections. What this is going to do is it's going to help you improve on your skills on each of the things. So when you encounter easier sections, then you'll get through those really fast and it's going to come intuitively. I'm going to show you all some tricks on this, how to go faster on some of these so you're not wasting as much time. So let's get into this. All right, the first one. Pause to read this question. Okay. Once you're done going over it, let's look at what this is saying. Don't get bogged down with all the things. Yes, it may say there's f of x and a bunch of numbers. There's also g of x, but then you're also given h of x, and then you're looking for the x-intercept. Don't get bogged down in the small details. That's the last thing you want to do. What you want to do is focus on what's given and then build on that. So let's look into this. We know what f of x is because it gives us the equation. We know g of x, and h of x is equal to f of x plus g of x. And now we're looking for the x-intercept. That's all you need to know. Don't get bogged down with the words. So let's do this. Let's add f of x and g of x. We can first add the like terms. We can add the x's. 1/4 and 3/4. That's just going to be x. Then let's add the ones without x. It's -9 and 21. And when you add those together, you're just going to get 12. And this is going to equal h of x, but it also says h of x equals y. So we have our y equals mx plus b right here. But now the axis for the x-intercept. The x-intercept is basically going to be whatever graph it is crosses the x-axis. It's similar to our y-intercept, just slightly different. And when it crosses the x-axis is when y equals 0. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to set this y is equal to 0. This tells us that 0 equals x plus 12. And then what we can do with this system of equations now, we just subtract 12 from each side, canceling it out on this right here. And then you have -12 right here. And this is just going to tell us that our x-intercept is going to be when x is equal to -12. And which our answer we're going to have right here, going by x then y, the x-intercept is going to be -12, comma 0 for that y value. And here's our answer. This one is one of the harder problems just because you have a lot to keep track of. But my tip to this is just underline what's important and then just get straight to the point. Just go for it. If you need to draw some graphs to visualize it, that's also helpful. And make sure your work is neat and concise so you're not missing anything. Now let's move on to the next one. The solution to the given system of equations is x, y. What is the value of 6, x minus 2? I'll let you pause, read it, and hopefully solve it. Okay, once you have solved it, we can get into this. Now there's 2 things you can go about doing here. Some are easier, some are harder to do. You can go at this as Desmos. My one problem with Desmos is you will get your answer really fast. You'll probably get your answer really fast, but it's going to take a long time to plug these things in. But you can see this is a system of equations. 2 equations. And you're going to see there's like terms. You have y plus 7 here, and that's just the same as being one variable. And then you have x minus 2 as another one. And what you can do is you can combine these 2 equations. When you combine them, you're going to see these 4 y plus 7 cancel out. And then you're just adding 117 and 442, and then x minus 2 two times. And what you're going to be left with is 2x minus 2 equals this 117 plus 442. You can use a calculator with this or do it in your head, but you're going to get 559 when you add these two together. What's this going to tell us is that 2x minus 2 is equal to 559, but we're looking for 6x minus 2. And all that's going to do to figure that out, we just need to multiply this whole equation by 3. And that's going to result in 6x minus 2 equaling 559 times 3. And yes, that's yucky to do with your own hands and you have room for error. So just use a calculator, either Desmos or whichever graphing calculator you brought with yourself. And you'll do 559 times 3. And you're going to get 1,677. And that's all it is. It's very simple. Now, here's where tip number 2 comes in. Often when you see a system of equations, you're going to see that something is super easily going to cancel out. And another thing is your answer is going to be something similar to when you combine the two equations, because that's what they're looking for you to do. It's just knowing intuitively that you need to combine the equations. And that's how you get it really fast. You don't need to go straight to Desmos. You just need to combine them. And your answer is going to be something almost identical to one of the variables when you combine it. And that's really it. College Board isn't making these questions super tough. They're making it tough in the way in which you think there's more work than there actually is, when it's very little work. Now let's move into the next one. Another system of equations. For each real number r, which of the following point lies on the graph of each equation in the xy plane for the given system? I'll give you a moment to solve this question. All right. Hopefully you got an answer if you paused it. And now we're going to go into this. We have real numbers r, and we see that each answer choice has these r values. And we're looking for them. But r is some sort of, it could be any number. We don't know. This is where students get tough because they see these letters in the answers and they don't know how to go about it. But just know real numbers include 0. So what we can actually do is just set r equal to 0. When we set r equal to 0, this A answer is going to be 7 and then 35. So let's just simplify all the answer choices and to make it very easy later on. This is just going to be 0. Or no, sorry. Yeah, no, this is going to be 7 over 2, 0. This one's going to be 0, 7 over 3. And then this one right here is going to be 0, 7 over 2. So now we simplify the answer by just plugging in r as 0. We can attack this question. Let's go over some of the easier ones. Since we see that there's some x's and some y's equal 0, let's do this first before tackling A. So let's do the B, y equals 0. So let's just make all these 0. And then from there, it's just combining the x. You'll get 12x equals 42. And that's just from combining the 7 and 35 and 2 and 10. And you got rid of the y's because you plugged in a 0. And then you just divide each side by 12. And when you divide each side by 12, you then simplify it. You can divide everything by 2. You can get it down to 6, 21. And then you have 3 in common, and you can get it down to 7 over 2. And before even having to tackle all of them, we have our answer. This one matches up. This one checks out. And so it works. So our answer is going to be B already. And if it wasn't B, you just go about plugging in different values. For C and D, plug in an x value of 0, combine the terms, combine 3y and 15y and 7 over 35. And if your answer works out, then that'll be the answer. But if it doesn't, then it's not the answer. A is a little bit more messy one, but you can always first combine them and then get an answer. And that's all it is. So my tip for this one is if you have an r between any real number, keep it easy on yourself, set it equal to 0 and 1, and then just combine the terms and you'll get your answer. It's very quick, fast, and easy. Try and first simplify whatever your answer is and whatever the question is so that you can get your answer faster. And you can also just do this using Desmos by graphing these two problems and then just looking for each of these individual points, which is also a fast way to do it. Let's go on to our next one. All right. Here we have some sort of graph. They're asking what the value of S is. I'll give you a moment to read this question and then solve it. Okay, after you pause the video, let's go over this. So, some important things. She's working 2 part-time jobs. The graph, notice the number of hours for each individual job. She earns $10 for working job A, 20 for working job B, and total of S, and S is what we're looking for. What is the value of S? All right. So we'll just write S, and we know it has to be some sort of dollars. And if you've taken any economics class, this looks much like a PPC. It's basically just trade-offs. So instead of making it hard and taking a point here or here, let's make it easy on ourselves and just take one of these points at one extreme or this extreme. Let's take when she works B, job B, because this makes it easier. And so let's say 1 week she put all her time into job B. That means she'd work right here, which is at 8 hours. So if she works job B, she's going to be working 8 hours. And this is assuming she puts all her time into this. And now you don't have to worry about A. You can get A out of the picture. You don't have to worry about the amount of money she's making. Now we just have to worry about the amount of money she's making in job B. And that's going to be equal to S. So you're just doing 8 times the amount of money from job B, which is 20. 8 times 20 is just 160. And then match it to our answer, and we'll get B. This one's very quick and easy. When you see a graph, first, my tip for that is just quickly understand what it is. This one, in this case, is a trade-off, so just take one of the extreme. If you ask you to find a slope, take the easy points, which are easy to identify. And in terms of all this information, try and simplify. It's going back to that simplification trick, because once you get it simplified, this is easy elementary math. So you just need to understand the problem. That's my tip for it. Algebra is probably one of the easiest sections you'll come into because all the problems are the same thing. It's slope, intercepts, or some kind of value. And that's all it is. All right, here's our next problem. Our next problem is here. I'll give you a moment to pause and figure it out. Okay. Once you pause and figure it out, let's go over this. First 10 hours, he earns $8 per hour. He gets a raise now, and he works $10 per hour for the rest of the week, and he saves 90% of it. And he wants to save 270. So 270 is our main goal from taking 90% of our hourly rates. So $10 per hour plus that $8 per hour. This isn't the proper equation, just view there as being some rates here. Now what we're going to do next, this isn't a proper equation, just keep it as a visual, I guess. So we know for the first 10 hours he works for $8. And so just 10 times 8. We know he already has earned $80. But then we have to add the hours he works from working $10. And how we can do this is we know that $10 per hour is the same as $10 equals some amount of money divided by hours. Now, what we're going to do here is we don't really know how much money this is, but we can figure it out. Because $80, he's going to save 90% of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to just multiply this 80 times 0.9. That's going to equal 72. From this, we now know that he needs to save 270 minus 72. Meaning he needs to work till he makes $198 more dollars. And this is going to come from his $10 hourly rate. But this $10 hourly rate is 0.9 because you're taking 90% of it. So it's going to be 9 is equal to 198 divided by some hours. And this is hours for the rest of this week. And this is what we're looking for. Now we're going to move hours to the other side, and you're going to get 9 hours is equal to 198. And then you're going to divide each side by 9. And you can use your calculator or do it in your head, and you're then going to get 22. Don't make the mistake of adding this 10 hours because this is the amount they're looking for the amount of hours after he earns $10 per hour. That's your answer. My tip for this is first, again, underline what you know and keep in mind percentages. Remember that percentages can be converted to decimals and use all the information because all the information that is given is going to be used. And from there, you can figure out your equation and what you need to do. This is one of the more wordy problems, which is why it's a bit harder. But if you take each information chunk by chunk, for example, working with the $8 per hour and the $10, then going to the 270 and being able to figure out how much money he would make from the $10 per hour hourly rate, chunking it and doing it into parts is going to help you a lot. And that's how I tackle this problem. Now let's go on to the next one. Let's go on to the next problem. Take a minute to pause and read it. All right, once you're done reading, maybe even solving, let's highlight what's important. There's 81 employees, $14,000 budget, and 7% tail tax. What we're first going to do is we're going to find out the amount of money, although it's asking how much she can pay before the sales tax, let's find it including the sales tax. What we're going to do is we're going to divide 14,000 and we're going to divide this by 81. What we're going to get from this when you plug it into your calculator is 172.84. Yes, this is one of the answer choices, but it's not going to be the answer because this includes the sales tax. But from here, we're going to make an equation. This $172.84 equals some X value before the sales tax, and then you're increasing that sales tax by 0.7, or you're increasing the amount by 0.7 because you have the 7% sales tax. So it's X times 1.07. Then what we're going to do is just divide each side by 1.07. And we divide each side by 1.07. We're going to get our answer. So let's divide 172.84 divided by 1.07. And we're going to get an answer then of 161.53, which would be answer choice B. And this is our answer. Now, this problem is confusing if you don't try and set up equations. So here's my next tip. Always try and set up equations when possible. Because if not, you're going to get confused with how percentages work. And what I'm going to guess most of you people would have done is you're going to multiply this 172.84 times 0.93. But that's going to be wrong. Because you didn't set up your equation properly. It needs to look like this. And you need to actually divide it by 1.07. And that's my tip for you. And read it carefully, because I'm sure a lot of you would have just went with C if you didn't see before the sales tax. when this $14,000 to spend the maximum is going to be after the sales tax. All right, let's move on to our next problem. All right, here's our next problem. I'll give you some time to pause, read it, and hopefully get an answer. All right, once you're done pausing, let's go through this. We know it's going to intersect at 4y. So let's start plugging in some values into each of these equations. Let's plug in the 4's of x's, which we're going to get 4a equals by, which equals 72. And then 6 times 4 is going to equal 24, plus 2by, which equals 56. We can do some cleaning up with this though, in order to make it much simpler. What we can do is we can move this 24 to the other side by subtracting it from 56. And then we can simplify this to 2by equals 32. And just by doing this, we can then solve for by. Divide each side by 2, and you'll see by is equal to 16. So we're easily able to figure out by doing this. Now what we're going to do here, now we have by, let's plug it back into this first equation over here, which we'll call equation 1. So once we plug it back into here, you'll then get 4a equals 6 plus 16 equals 72. What we're then going to do is we're going to do 72 and subtract 16 from it, because we're going to move 16 to the other side. And 72 minus 16 is equal to 56. 56 is then going to equal 4a. And then just divide each side by 4. And we're then going to get a is equal, using our calculator or your head, a is going to equal 14. And our answer is going to be D. My solution for this is, first, if you're given the point where they intersect, plug in the values first. It's to make it easier. And because you have some constant, you're going to know these can combine, in which then you can solve one equation first, the one that doesn't have the two variables. And from there, it's just figuring out and solving it. Like I said, when you have two of these things, one of the equations will most likely get you an answer, or combining them to get you an answer. In this case, the second equation will get you the answer. But that's the fast way to do that. And on paper, you can probably get this done in a minute or two, which will make your pace of module 1 and 2 on math super good. And this is one of the hardest ones you'll probably see, involving more constants like a and b, and this isn't the most complicated thing even. Now I have one more. Sorry. And that was the end of it. These are probably the hardest problems you'll find on the SAT. Remember your tips. Identify everything in the thing that you need to know. The SAT isn't going to give you useless information. Everything is going to have to be used. When given two system of equations, probably the hardest ones in the algebra section, remember to combine them. Because when you combine them, you're going to get an answer that is very similar to what they're asking for. Set up equations when possible, and also simplify those equations, because it's going to make your math so much easier. If you don't have to use decimals, try not to, because some of these are going to be very straightforward too. Don't forget that. And try and keep your work organized. I know this wasn't as organized, but you will be able to on the test on a scratch sheet of paper. These are the hardest problems you'll see on the SAT algebra section. And going back to this first thing, you may be wondering, when did we go over linear functions? That was embedded to most of the inequalities and systems. They all overlap in this algebra section, and you're going to see a lot of the same questions, which is why this one was more straightforward. And that was all. Later on, we're going to be posting one on the rest of the 3 sections, going over their hardest problems. So we hope you'll watch that too. I'll link the algebra questions down below. You guys want that? And that'll be all from us. Thank you.